Welcome to the show, everyone. I'm excited about bringing on my first guest. She's been on with me at least 5 years, I think maybe more, I don't know. I have with me Anna Von Straussenburg. She's the owner of Anna Von Straussenburg CPA. We're live on Facebook, so I do want to say hi to everybody out there. I always say the same thing. Like us and follow us. We're going to share the show later on. Anna, thank you for being on, and I want you to tell first everybody a little bit about yourself, and I want people to understand what makes you different.
Okay, thank you, Carol. Well, I call myself a backdoor accountant because I actually got a degree in liberal studies and was going to be a teacher, and then realized that, well, they were laying off teachers when I graduated, and then the teachers didn't make very much money, and I thought, well, why should I spend another year in college to go get a teaching credential that's really not going to be, worth the money I pay to get it. So I worked, I did some school for work in a private school, and then one day I came home just really unhappy, and my husband said, "This time you quit that job. I think you need to get a job in business," because he said, who else does their family budget on a spreadsheet?
And this was in what year?
This was back in 1990.
Yeah, nobody.
Nobody. And
Hardly
the
anybody
computers,
had a computer.
the personal computers were just kind of a sort of a new thing.
Yeah.
And so I went and interviewed for a couple different jobs. I ended up working for an accounting firm. I started off on the bottom rung, but after I got my, feet under me with that new job, I decided to go back to college and study accounting. So I took all the courses I needed to sit for the CPA exam and got what they called an accounting certificate from UCSB, and I'm very proud of that school, and they taught me well. And so, and I was, had a job waiting for me right there at the firm I was working for, so I moved into the accounting department once I was, close to finishing all my courses, and I learned a lot on the job, which I think is very valuable.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, Anna is all about excellence and integrity in accounting. And you are, if there isn't anyone that I will, when you look up excellence and integrity, there is a picture of you right there in the dictionary.
Yeah, I once was told by a former employer that I couldn't tell a lie to save my life, and I believe that. It was something, my parents brought me up to be ethical. They brought me up to be kind and to, try to help people. And, by example, I saw how my dad would help people out. And so I try to, kind of embrace that attitude when I'm working with accountants. Of course, I get paid, and sometimes, I charge people what it's worth, what
Right.
my work is worth. But, I work with people if they need a little help. Sometimes I'll say, hey, you can pay me overtime, or, and some cases where the referral comes from a close friend, I give them a little discount, and I give a free consultation to everybody.
Yes,
so the
you
first
do.
hour is free.
And here's the thing about Anna. Well, first of all, you also guarantee your work, okay? And, if there isn't anyone better at numbers, I'm just going to say you're all about that. You have a very sharp pencil, and you're all about making sure that things are done correctly, right? Even in the office, you have people look at, several times before it actually gets.
Oh, yes, we do review the tax returns. We have a system where one person prepares the tax return and somebody else in the office reviews it. And then even down to our administrative person who prints and assembles the tax returns, she's learned a lot about taxes over the years, and if she sees something that looks odd, she'll often come to me and she'll say, hey, is this right? Or should this person have estimated tax payments? And she'll catch like little things and bring it to my attention. So there's always 3 sets of eyes that look at every tax return. And, and I take one last look at it as I'm doing the bill. So actually, I put my eyes on it twice.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I'll say, hey, wait a minute, I'm not sure if that's right. I'll look at something, and I have often said, oh, dear, I want to change something. And I'll say to my administrative assistant, I'm sorry, but you have to reprint this return because I made a change. But you know, I try to do it right the first time, but I always look it over one more time.
To make sure.
Make
Now,
sure.
we're gonna be talking about taxes today because it's April 1st, and everybody knows April is big time tax season. Cause you gotta get all your taxes in, if you're gonna get them, done by the 15th, right?
Yes, it's really getting close to the wire. Of course, you can go on extension, but you know, there's a caveat with going on extension. The extension is a time to file your tax returns, but not a time to pay. So if you think you're going to owe, it's a good idea to pay the IRS a little bit or something, whatever you can upfront, you know, maybe try to estimate it, so that you don't get a late payment penalty or an underpayment penalty. And sometimes my strategy with people who have to make regular estimated tax payments quarterly, my strategy with them is to often say, well, let's do your payment, we'll pay with the extension, and we'll add what would be your first quarter estimate to that extension payment, so that if whatever's left over after we finish the return, we just apply it to the next year's tax, cause you know, you have to make your first quarterly payment
now,
on
pay later, right?
April 15th, so I do that as a strategy.
Now, the phone number to call her, it's 480-964-4030, that's 480-964-4030. She does free consultations, she does second opinions, and please, anybody who thinks that maybe their taxes have been done wrong, or you have questions about them, have her look at them, because you tell everybody how many times you will find a mistake.
I would say like 99% of the time I find 100% of the time I find a mistake. Most of the time I save people money. I did have one client who just had not reported a whole bunch of income, and I couldn't help her there, but we amended her return, so it's correct now.
So she does second opinions as well. You can call her direct at 480-964-4030. She's also rated with the Better Business Bureau. She works nationwide. You can check her out on her website. It's Arizona CPAs with an S.com. It's April, so it's tax time. Put this number in your phone. Let's take care of the taxes, or if you have to, she can even get you an extension. That number to call again, it's 480-964-4030. That's 480-964-4030. It's Arizona CPAs with an S.com. Hang tight, we'll be back in just a minute.
That was good. That was really good timing today.
Okay, yes, and so we're still live on Facebook. For what, you know, when this is your time of the year, right? I mean,
oh yeah.
But for you, really, all year round is CPA time.
Yeah. We're busy. I get a little breather at the end of October, but then we start ramping up and preparing for the next year. And people who need amended returns, or other tax planning, that's what we do between October 15th and January 1st. We try to do some tax planning.
Well, you know what? I think people should be doing tax planning a lot more than they do.
Oh, yes.
Right?
Yes.
Because they put this thing off because they don't want to deal with it.
Yeah.
Right?
And some things, you know, there's some things you have to do by a certain time. If you want to set up certain kinds of retirement plans, you have to do that by the end of September.
Okay.
So
there's a lot to be always talking about when it comes to taxes. And don't put your head in the sand. If you owe taxes, get them done, right?
Yep. And I got a call for a second opinion today. Somebody had their returns done by a big major firm. You know, I won't mention their names, but you know, it's a couple letters. And anyway, she says, I don't think it was done right, so I want to come in and talk to you.
Wow.
So
I wonder if she heard you here.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
Well, you know, interesting enough, you know, I think that people just think that if you're, whatever you do, if you're a CPA or mostly anybody, they just know what they're doing. But people are human, right? And things happen. But a big firm like that, shouldn't just be having a couple of sets of eyes on it, they should have more.
Oh,
Because
yes,
they're banging those out as fast as they can.
that's true, they do. They're good with the simple returns, and I don't even try to compete with that.
No, because you're
One of my
better than them.
employees actually did work for them, at one time, and that's how he got trained, and he was very good on the individual returns, and in fact, he was so good, they wanted him back, and so he would work a little bit for them on the weekends, but he's like, yeah, these are like, returns they're charging $200 for, you know. And, my business model is looking more for the high-end clients that really need my help.
I understand that. Sorry.
Oh, I can hear the ad. I can hear the ad, and it's, I guess it's Doc does his own.
So welcome back, everyone. I just have to say this before we start talking a little bit more about taxes. If you have a complicated return, Anna is the one to call, because she actually enjoys doing them.
Yes, I enjoy the challenge, and just over the years, I have learned so many things. Like, I've done a lot of clients who work for big corporations where they get instead stock options or restricted stock options or have employee purchase plans, and those all have special rules of how to deal with them. And unfortunately, one of the biggest gotchas on that is most of those, when you exercise them, they report a portion in your W-2. A lot of people don't realize that the brokerage statements don't always show what's in the W-2. So a lot of times people will pay more taxes than they should because they're not, they're paying basically double on part that goes in their W-2.
Well, don't try and do it on your own, that's for sure. If you have a complicated return. Also, anybody, really honestly, if you have a simple return, then you can do it either yourself or maybe go to some of those big box places. But, most people really should be going. They don't realize it that anybody, you work with small, medium, you do both.
Yeah.
You do both business and personal taxes as well. So today you wanted to talk a little bit about business taxes and depreciation.
Yeah, well, the depreciation is one of the opportunities we have to do a little bit of tax planning. And a lot of people think, well, I can take section 179 and get a real big deduction on my tax return. Well, first of all, let me explain what that is. A section 179 is where you can deduct the entire purchase price of an asset, like a pickup truck or a big piece of machinery, depending on what its depreciation life is. There's a lot of rules, and you can write it all off. And then there's also what they call bonus depreciation, and for a few years, the bonus depreciation was much like the 179, where you could write off the entire purchase price of an asset. Now they've rolled it back, it's only 80% now. And then there's regular depreciation, and the interesting thing is, by the IRS rules, you actually usually depreciate a little bit more up front, and then it gradually reduces because they're figuring, well, you lose a lot of the value in the asset the first year. Which of those makes sense? Well, as a lot of the answers in accounting go, it depends.
I knew you were going to say that.
Now, bonus depreciation is kind of the default method. So in the case of somebody filing late, you might be stuck with that. But there is a strategy. You can choose to do section 179, if you don't want too much depreciation. And why wouldn't you want too much depreciation? Well, if you're making your tax return have a big loss when you really, you shouldn't be. Sometimes the losses, can hurt you more than help you if you don't have a lot of other income to offset those losses. Then you're stuck with a net operating loss carryover, and that's limited to a percentage of your taxable income, so sometimes you may not be getting all of the benefit from that. So that's one reason you wouldn't wanna do that. And with the section 179, it's limited to your taxable income, so if you have, low income or no income, it'll limit it to your return showing a 0. And sometimes that's helpful because it'll carry over to the next year, and then you can deduct it if you know you're gonna have more income in the following year, you can do that. But one of the reasons you wouldn't wanna do section 179 is if you have financed the asset. And you ask me, well, why? Well, what's gonna happen is you'll take the deductions up front, but you will be paying tax. It won't be reducing your tax, but you'll be paying the payments on that vehicle, let's say, without the tax help with that, because the payments on the tax, you can on the loan, you can only deduct the interest. So you're making principal payments, and you're gonna be taxed on the whole, all your income in the business without the benefit of that depreciation deduction. So sometimes you may wanna elect to, depreciate it over the life of the vehicle, which is often the same life as a loan. A lot of loans are 5 years, so that would give you a little bit more even tax picture. So that's the kind of thing I like to look at with clients, as complicated as it sounds.
Yeah.
That's why you need to come see me, because we look at your overall picture, what your income is like this year, what your income is gonna be like next year, and what's the best option for you and your situation.
I think I've asked you this maybe once before. I know we talked about Teslas, because a lot of people do buy them.
Mhm.
And I said, do you think that someone should come and talk to you as a CPA before they buy some of these electric cars?
Absolutely, because the deduction for the Tesla is limited to how much income tax you're going to owe. And so if your tax liability, not gonna owe, but your overall tax liability is too low, you're gonna lose that tax credit, because it's a non-refundable credit and it does not carry over. So it makes absolute sense for somebody to come talk to me.
And there's not just Teslas, there's all sorts of cars out there now that are like that, and everybody's just buying them, right? And though I really think it's a good idea for people to listen up. That's what I love about this show the most, is that it gives this great information for people, because where else are you gonna hear something like that? You may never know that.
Yeah, and any kind of tax credits, like, if you put solar on your home, you may wanna talk to a CPA before you do that. A lot of times I've had clients come in that were elderly, and they put that on their home, and they weren't gonna live long enough to see the benefits of that solar. Yeah, they got the tax credit, but the tax credit is only a percentage of what you pay, and so you're still paying some out of pocket that you're not getting back in any way. And it takes sometimes about 10 years to recuperate your expenses on that, depending on how much you pay. And it broke my heart. A little old lady, got hooked into doing one of those, and we took it, the deduction. It was one that carried over, and then only a couple years later she passed away.
Isn't that sad?
And it was so sad, because I knew that she never used enough of that solar to make it worth all the money she paid for it.
That's why it's always important when you're doing these things, is to have a consultation. Anna's consultations are complimentary to you. She works nationwide. She does second opinions. You can call her direct at 480-964-4030. That's 480-964-4030. You can check her out on her website, which is ArizonaCPAs.com. Okay, before we go today, I want you to kind of see, did you want to talk to them anything more about taxes, since it's right around the corner?
Well, it is right around the corner, and if nothing else, get your tax data in so we have enough data to do an extension. Like I said, you know, it is an extension of time to file, but not a time to pay. So, I'd like to see people's W-2s and maybe, you know, a little bit of what their other income is so we can get a good ballpark figure, so.
Well, people understand this too, is that Anna works with small businesses, medium-sized businesses, all kinds of businesses. And she also helps people who are, should say, entrepreneurs that are self-employed, right? And she's here to help, and she does a real good job. She's helped a lot of people out that are our listeners. And you should never try and do these things on your own. And if you are going to those big box places, you probably are going to be happier that you went to Anna, because you know, you just never know what you don't know, right?
That's
We've
true.
said that a lot on this show.
Oh, yeah, I've just seen so many cases where people just don't really know what they don't know, and they don't realize certain things like, hey, if you have money in a foreign bank account, you have to do special reporting for that, and a lot of people don't realize that. And I've had clients that come to me who moved from another country and they hadn't been reporting that.
Well, I'll tell you something, we've got a couple of minutes. If you realize that tax season is right here, April 15th, and you know something, if you're a business, you can get an extension. All you have to do is call Anna and she'll help you with that as well. Anybody that is looking to get their taxes done should talk to Anna and have that free consultation. What are your final words?
Don't procrastinate, get it done. And yeah, I just really enjoy the business, and
you know what I think too, people don't realize that you yourself, you just mentioned that, you know, don't procrastinate, get it done. There are a lot of people that don't get it done for a long time, and those people out there, listen up, because Anna also is really great when she can talk for you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I actually had the privilege of getting a new client in that hadn't done his 2021 tax returns, and his old CPA said, oh, sorry, we're not doing any past year tax returns now. Well, it turned out the guy had a refund coming, and you know what, after 3 years after the filing date, which would have been in 2022, April 15th, that golden egg goes away.
And guess what? He got a return. He
Yeah,
got something
he's got
back.
a refund back, yeah, so I was thrilled that I could help him. So.
And I'm sure he was thrilled as well. The number to call, because you're going to be thrilled too, that number is 480-964-4030. That's 480-964-4030. She does complimentary consultations. She works nationwide. She's rated with the Better Business Bureau. She does second opinions. Call her at 480-964-4030. That's 480-964-4030. Arizona CPAs with an S.com.
There.